Warning, this is a clop fic. Twilight Sparkle eats a cookie. 2:36 p.m., the same time everything changed. Forever. For on that faithful time, on that faithful day, Twilight Sparkle, Equestria's Princess of Friendship, did something so incredible that no pony's life would ever be the same again. She ate a cookie. A chocolate chip cookie, to be precise. Baked in the oven for exactly 12 minutes, making the outer layer crunchy yet leaving the inside warm and gooey. More delicious than anything she ever imagined. The chocolate chips melted on her tongue as she savored the first bite. The perfect recipe for the cookie was laying in her hooves and in her mouth. Twilight closed her eyes and pictured herself sitting on a bench in the park, all alone with a basket of cookies. She would eat them one by one, letting the gooey chocolate chips cover her tongue in a rich, brown, milky layer of pure sweetness. God damn it, I'm hungry. Of course, that was not the case for Twilight. No, she was in her library reading a book about cookie recipes. It was titled Cookies, Recipes for Cookies, a creative title, and one for delicious cause. Twilight began to swallow the first bite of her cookie. She concentrated on all her nerves, feeling the mashed up wonder slide down her esophagus. Honestly, that's better than thick ropes of semen that I read a while ago. After feeling it had been completely swallowed, Twilight took another bite of the delicious luxury. The purple alicorn squealed in delight as the hot, perfectly baked cookie touched her tongue. Slowly, she clenched her teeth, feeling it mash up from the strength of her bite. As she opened her mouth again, she licked the chocolate off her front tooth, adding it to the pile of deliciousness in her mouth. After chewing it more, the alicorn swallowed the second bite. This time, the bit of cookie did not go down for long. In fact, it barely made it down halfway her throat before she felt her stomach turn. Something wasn't right. Worried that the chocolate-filled bliss was coming to an end, Twilight rushed to the recipe book. She began frantically flipping through the pages, tears coming for her eyes. Was this the end of the cookie-eating experience? She knew they wouldn't have been as good cold. There must have been something she did. The cookie book would never lie. However, Twilight hadn't missed a single step in the recipe book. She had followed all of them accordingly. She couldn't stand the fact that she was about to lose the delicious cookie. Tears poured from her eyes and she screamed of sadness. She went through all of that trouble, and now she only got 2 bites. She could feel it coming any minute. She was going to get sick, and while she vomited, the cookies would get cold. There would be no way to save herself now. This was going to be the end. The cookies were to become room temperature. The thing I don't understand is, if she's an alicorn, why doesn't she just heat the cookies back up? Can't she do that? Now, Twilight Sparkle was persistent. She wouldn't give up over something like that. An idea finally popped into her head, a foolproof idea. She clip-clopped happily over to the cookie sheet, where the rest of the cookies that were getting cold were. Levitating it, she began galloping into her bathroom. Twilight was now hovering the tray over her toilet. Slowly, Twilight tilted the cookie sheet. One by one, the cookies began sliding into the toilet bowl, splashing in the water and slightly discoloring it. After every cookie fell into the toilet and sank to the bottom, Twilight kneeled and looked in the toilet bowl, dropping the cookie sheet on the ground next to her. After a few dry heaves, she began vomiting delicious cookie-filled mixtures into the toilet bowl. A murky, greenish yellow began to form in the toilet bowl. Twilight's throat burned as stomach acid came spewing out of her mouth. It tasted delicious. She could almost separate each ingredient of the cookie, which had all been heated by her bodily fluids. After finishing, Twilight looked down at the toilet bowl. It was now a green mixture of stomach acid and food chunks. The alicorn dipped her hoof into the bowl. It was extremely warm. Closing her eyes, she lifted her hoof up to her mouth and licked the vomit up. The chocolate in the cookies was still in the vomit somewhere, and Twilight didn't care how little she could actually taste it. She just imagined it. I went too far. Sorry. Twilight then proceeded to shove her whole head in the toilet bowl, vomit coating her entire face and flowing up her nose. But there's something interesting about horse anatomy, actually. It's impossible for a horse to throw up through their mouth because their digestive system and all that stuff does not work like that. If a horse throws up, they have to throw up through their nose. Just think about that. She opened her mouth and started lapping it up like a dog. The toilet water was completely tasteless, so all she got was her own stomach acid mixed with food from before. Forcing herself to go in further, just like I'm doing with this fanfic, her neck was now being coated in vomit as well. Finally, Twilight was able to reach some of the cookies at the bottom. She grabbed one in her mouth and quickly pulled herself out of the toilet bowl. Slowly, Twilight went to a metaphorical paradise as she chewed the cookie. Vomit dripped out of her ears and went back into the toilet bowl. Some from her face was dripping into her wide-open mouth, mixing in with the delicious cookie. Twilight welcomed the taste of vomit as she continued to munch down on the warm cookie. With one gulp, she swallowed the cookie and the stomach acid. Now Twilight wanted some milk to go with it. Leaving a trail of vomit as she walked, the mare made her way to her fridge. Opening it, she levitated an unopened gallon out of her fridge. After closing the door, Twilight began chugging milk straight from the gallon. After drinking about half of it, Twilight felt she couldn't take anymore. She really had to pee as well. Twilight went to the toilet bowl and stood on her hind legs. Using her forehooves, she spread the folds of her marehood, which was sopping wet. Ignoring her arousal, she began peeing into the vomit cookie solution. Pleasure rushed through her body as she released the yellow fluid into the toilet bowl. A new feeling of excitement traveled through Twilight's brain. She needed to climax or her marehood would be asking for attention for the next day. Twilight dunked her head into the even bigger solution and managed to grab 2 cookies from the bottom. The alicorn removed her head from the toilet bowl and, gasping for breath, dropped the 2 cookies on the ground. She stuck her hoof back in the toilet for a few seconds and got it wet in her vomit and urine. Then Twilight used her clitora hoof? Is that even a word? Clitter hoof, I think. I don't know. To start massaging her clitoris. A huge amount of bliss rushed into Twilight's brain as she came hard on the 2 cookies. She moaned and screamed as she sprayed her mare juices all over the bathroom floor. Panting, Twilight grabbed a liquid-covered cookie and began shoving it up her anus with extreme force. Twilight shrieked as the acid dripped out of her anal passage. Twilight, still shoving the cookie farther inside of her, took the other cookie and began shoving it in her marehood. Twilight had never felt this much pleasure before. Moaning loudly, she shoved her entire left hoof into her anus, pushing the cookie up as far as it would go. Her holes were both getting extremely stretched out, and she could feel her acid-coated hooves touching each other through her skin. Practically screaming now, Twilight had another wave of pure bliss as she orgasmed harder than she ever had before, ejecting both hooves and cookies from her body. Exhausted, Twilight planted her face on the ground, not even bothering to flush the toilet. As she dozed off, she took one final bite of the cookie and closed her eyes, and they didn't stay closed for long. Twilight? The purple pony screamed, as did Spike. That was interesting. There's another one called Rainbow Dash Eats a Brownie, I think. I'm not sure if I'll read that with another person, but I don't know. But as you can see, this has 868 views, 56 likes, and 52 dislikes. Let's change that, shall we? It says 57 likes now. Well, I guess that was the fanfic. See you guys. Goddamn Camtasia making me hit the wrong button.